Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon all of you. Start with the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sending peace and salutations upon his final messenger, Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. I hope everyone is doing well, inshallah. Thankful to be here today again with One Way to Tarbiyah. Very thankful to Abu Musab and his family for the opportunity to do this. Inshallah, I think this will be our final session specialized for One Way to Tarbiyah. If those of you who have not seen, I will be taking the course to my own channel, inshallah, beginning on June 11th. Starting off where we started off back in February more, and also kind of including the session I did with the Parenting Summit in October. Wayakum, brother. And you know, alhamdulillah, refining it and adding to it. So inshallah, all of you will continue to follow along there, continue to benefit. And I'll be recommending people to One Way to Tarbiyah as well, because alhamdulillah, we need to work together in these efforts and many of the activities and things that One Way to Tarbiyah puts together. It's very important, especially the stuff, you know, getting the kids to have some time off the screens. You know, COVID has really made the screen time very, very intense. You know, people will make arguments that, you know, they're going to grow up in a screen. They're growing up in a screen world and digital world and all that stuff. So they have to know how to use it. You know, there's an extent of truth to that. But at the same time, like, it's not too hard to learn how to use the digital devices. You don't need to be on it 90% of your waking hours in order to know how to do it. So that is somewhat of a lame excuse to just allow kids to be on the screens. And we need to help them have time not on the screens, and, you know, structured family time and structured activities to do with that are a big part of that. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi nawal. Thank you for the salam. Jazakumullah khair. Anyone else who shows up during the live, please throw the salam in the chat so we can get the blessing of passing the salam around. I believe the chat, I think I see it like on a 10-second delay or about, so if I'm a little late, giving it back, forgive me. But June 11th, Abraham Education, I'll be going back. I'll be starting the course to a broader audience. Alhamdulillah, some hype is getting out there a little bit. I think it's going to be good. Inshallah, I ask all of you to, you know, forward my YouTube and Instagram channel to people you know, so the ummah can benefit and we can accomplish our goals with our children, which are possible, inshallah. Anyone who is in the live, if you have a question, feel free to throw it in any time during the chat, inshallah. If not towards the end sometime, I'll highlight it and answer it to the best of my ability. So last time I was talking about, you know, we're getting into talking to kids. Okay, so in February and the session in March, you know, is big on nonverbals, which are huge, with the overall emphasis of being relaxed, which to me is the 100% biggest thing to emphasize to parents in dealing with kids, and working on facial expression and the approach to kids. Then when you get to talking to them, it gets a little more, you know, teaching it's more of an art. You know, even the nonverbals are an art in how you use them. You know, the slow turn, the approach, the pausing. It's an art. It's something you refine with practice. The actual talking to kids is a deeper thing. It takes reflection. It takes practice. All that type of stuff. So today, inshallah, what we're going to do is we're going to do some video analysis. This video analysis is very beneficial. It's a good method for online learning. So I've been doing lots of online teaching for 2 years. I've learned that playing a video while doing analysis of it, it's one of the more engaging ways to do learning in these formats. Also, too, you know, alhamdulillah, I have, you know, it's actual footage of me talking to kids in real life, in real time, which is somewhat rare because people are very sensitive about their interactions with kids. Excuse me, and gain the chance to see someone do it. where it's refined on my end to a degree because I've practiced with it and learned with it over time and learned what works and this type of stuff. So we're going to do some video analysis of some interactions that I've had with kids and things to take away from it. Now, this first one relates heavily to sibling rivalry, which is a big issue with everyone, certainly a big issue with Muslim families and all the kids we have, alhamdulillah, that we're blessed to have. This is a scenario where this is actually in a class that I teach at the end of the day. It's basically like a study hall class. So you see it's kind of dark in the footage there. And as kids were coming in, I don't do assigned seating in my classroom in high school. Some people do that. Some teachers think that's an essential thing to do in order to control the kids. There's some schools where they will explicitly it's actually very common middle and early high school. Those of you in the States, you might, just be aware of this. Some teachers, they intentionally make seating charts that are boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl during the middle school and early high school ages, because they think that is there is an extent to which that is an effective class control method. Why? Because kids are very awkward about the opposite gender at that age. When they're like under 11, kindergarten through third grade, they can be fairly comfortable and like naturally friends like normal with the opposite gender. By the time they're in middle school, they're awkward with the opposite gender. Alhamdulillah for the natural sensitivities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, of course. But some teachers in the West, they will leverage that in a way where they intentionally sit kids, boy, girl, to make it awkward, because that keeps them silent, makes them less likely to interact with their mendem, or whatever you will, that British word. This type of thing. Anyway, kids hate that. I don't do that. You have to find areas with adolescents, especially, where you give them some freedom of choice. And kids at any ages, they are going to feel more respected and feel more motivated when you give them choice where you can. So I don't create seating charts in any of my classes. I let the kids sit wherever they want. Something it also does, because I don't rely on that intergender awkwardness for them to just behave, they'll sit by their friends and stuff. It actually creates opportunities for me to coach respect into them and coach the proper conduct into them. And I'm actually looking for those opportunities. And in my experience, taking the time to deal with those situations is worth what you get for the long run, instead of trying to rely on a more coercive method like the seating chart. But anyway, in this class, what has happened here, two kids came into the class, a boy and a girl. One boy has a certain spot against the wall. He normally is one of the first kids into the class, so he gets to that spot. It's very comfortable for him, does his studies better with it because he can relax. He likes to sit sideways against the wall or whatever. He, even though there's no seating chart, he consistently gets this one spot every day, and it's something he's very, very attached to. Well, on this day, for whatever reason, he showed up a little late, and there was another girl who was in the seat when he got there, and he was upset about it. And he started getting rid of, oh, it's my seat, gotta get out, get out of here. They start getting the tit for tat. No, you blah, 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 blah. And he grabbed her cell phone, which was sitting in front of her, and said, I'm not giving this back to you until you got the seat. I'm not giving it back. Just this back and forth dispute like they get it. Now, I've dealt with this situation many a times. It relates to sibling rivalry and petty rivalry with kids a lot, because they argue over things a lot. That's mine, this is yours. You did this on it, all that type of thing. So I didn't plan to record this class at all, but as they're getting a dispute, I got my computer set up, and after I got their attention, I hit record, because I knew I was going to go into a talk with them that I've given many, many times to kids and that I know is effective with them. And effective across ages, actually. You might structure the way that you do it a little bit vocabulary-wise, depending on the age or what you explain it a little further more. But actually, really, having worked half my career in elementary school and half in high school, you'd be surprised the uniformity of things that work between across ages. But anyway, we'll play the talk here that I give the kids while they're fighting over the seating spot, and then break it down. You know how there's so many. You could hear the sound, correct? Inshallah, the sound could be heard. I'm going to assume that it was. Okay. Whoops. Not the right thing to do there. Sorry, give me one sec. Okay. You know how there's so many like disputes and fights in the world and things? You know what ends fights? Like people have a easy time having fighting go back and forth and fighting going in circles and fighting never ending. But you know what ends fights? Do you know? Okay, a few things just in that beginning part. First of all, I'm doing a really good job being relaxed here, and I'll place in the next videos I'm going to play. I'm talking more to the whole class, and when you're talking to the whole class, you have to be a little bit louder so you come off a little tense no matter what. And the scale at which kids are going to interpret you relax is a little different in that context versus when you're talking on them one-on-one or two-on-one. But here I'm just talking to two kids alone, and it's for all intents and purposes, it's not a whole class context because it's a study hall class, not set up that way. So it's a fairly good example of how relaxed you want to be. Now, just a moment before this, they were really, really tense, and I got them to be quiet and was able to calm myself down. So it's a fairly good model. Sometimes you have to be loud to interject or do whatever, though the more you practice those calm techniques, the more sensitive the kids will be to all of your body language and your approach, and they'll calm down easier. But it's a good example of being calm. Second thing, when I'm going into it, the first thing I'm talking about, it's not about either one of them, and it's not even about the dispute that they're having. This is something being done to depersonalize the whole thing. Because as I talked about in the last time, a core thing you always have to remember with kids is they have very, very high defense walls. They're intuitively going to be defensive. So you kind of want to do something when you're first approaching them that is just going to act to shift their mind out of the defensive mode and some of the hot mode that they're in when they're arguing. Just the relaxed disposition that you have yourself is the first thing that does it. Now, relating it to, to a higher thing. Okay, relating it to the world generally. Okay, relating it to those higher levels of abstraction that we talked about. There's the physical reality. There's our emotional reality. There's maybe the level of our family. There's the level of the society. There's the level of the whole world. There's the level at which we relate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all those different levels. Relating it to like a different level, that's something that puts them in a different frame of mind as well. Kids are naturally altruistic. They're naturally idealistic. They're more naturally, they're less cynical, they're less jaded, and they're more idealistic and more altruistic than we are as adults. But they have a hard time applying their altruism to their everyday actions. This is something that they need help maturing along. And we want Muslim kids to be more mature with that than the average kid. So it's something that we have to be conscious about pushing them along. We're not going to make a 15-year-old be in the place of a 32-year-old necessarily, by that, but we want them to be further along the trajectory. And a lot of the mistakes that we make in parenting when we over-coerce kids or overly reliant on, carrot and stick measures as a bludgeon or reward measures as these external incentives and stuff. A lot of that stuff actually has a dematuring effect on kids in this regard. And it's something that as an ummah we need to stop in a big way. So, appealing to their altruism is something we want to do. And it's important that in these real world interactions and these life interactions that we have, that we apply them specifically to them so that they can experience the connection with an actual dispute going on in their life. This is also very important for kids to apply these things when kids are playing. Something that Muslims do a lot as well. Like at Eid parties and stuff, you will see, Muslims, the adults are all over here. I mean, everyone's supposed to be having a good time and everything. But it's not just Eid, but a lot of times the kids are just left off to go into bouncy castles or whatever. Okay, let them play. Maybe let some teenagers watch them or whatever, and we'll do our whole thing over here. And the excuse that's made as well, they just need to get their energy out, just let them play, let them free play, this type of stuff. They do need to get their energy out and they need to play and stuff. And there is an extent to which you can over manage play. And a lot of white Caucasian parents, especially in America, do helicopter parenting. You don't want to do that. But you do want to supervise kids while they're playing. And you do want to know what's going on. And you do want to relate real life lessons of that, because kids learn a lot in those contexts. So, the relating of, disputes in the world generally. There's a lesson to be learned in this small dispute you're having over the seats into how disputes happen generally. There's universal lessons between the two, and we're going to get into it. And another thing, we'll stop back a little bit here. I'm going to replay the part I just did.
You know how there's so many disputes and fights in the world and things? You know what?
Okay, questioning. Rhetorical questioning, when using questioning is another way that you shift kids' minds a little bit, just to get out of that frame, to get them a little bit more into that reasoning mode, and a little bit out of the hotness, the emotional part of the dispute mode that they're in. Now, I have two types of questioning here. The first one is a simple one. It's basically a yes or no question. You know how there is this? It's just like yes or no. It's like, yeah, okay. That's an easily accessible question. And I talked a little bit in the session I did in October. I'll talk about more in my course, like when it comes to talking with kids. And I talked about a little bit in the last one. There's a continuum from abstract to concrete. And with your interaction on them, you want to build it up from simple to the more complex things, both over time and sometimes just within one interaction. So, asking yes or no questions that are easily accessible, that is how you can begin getting the interaction and kind of the connection between your mind and theirs going when you're talking, just to get them interacting, and asking the question too, it puts you in the driver's seat of the conversation. And it mitigates some of that. Well, he should, and a lesson out of this too is you don't want to get into solving these disputes for the kids. It's rare that you can do that. You want to do that when after you've positioned them to come to you to do that, which might happen after you do like what I'm going to show you here. But a lot of times, everything going on with these disputes, you can't really arbitrate it because you don't always know. And you don't want to play the investigator and all this type of stuff. Well, who did this? Who did that? That's a big trap that adults and parents fall into with kids that really goes nowhere. And it usually makes someone else feel cheated. And you don't want to do that. What you want to do is take the opportunity to teach the appropriate life lesson that needs to be taught and have them internalize it.
That ends fights. Like, people have an easy time having fighting go back and forth and fighting going in circles and fighting never ending. But you know what ends fights? Do you know?
Okay, you know how fights happen. That's a simple question. What do you know what ends fights? What's the thing that ends fights? I mean, this is the big point I'm getting to. And I'm building that up to increase their concentration towards me. And, again, just asking the question makes them think. And they don't know. And I'm not expecting them to know. I'm going to give them the answer here. But the question, again, it puts their brain into a certain frame of mind to be able to receive the lesson more. It's also slowing the lesson down. Okay. And in all these things with kids, it's really all about slowing things down your own mind first with the relaxation. And here, trying to slow down the dialogue, okay, by being slow with my speech and low in my tone of voice, even like soft with the hand motions and this type of thing. Like, you want to slow it down because, again, that puts kids more in a place to receive what you're saying. One, by de-emotionalizing it in the whole thing in their minds. Two, by giving them the sense that you have control over the situation and that the situation is nothing new to you and it's nothing new to the world, which it's not. All these things are typical. So why be worked up about it? When we're worked up and like quick to the point and stuff, that just makes everyone feel too rushed about everything. And the kids aren't in a place where they can intake anything.
someone choosing to be unselfish. That is what end fights. So a person who can choose to be unselfish, especially when a dispute comes up, that is the person who can do good in the world, do good for others.
Okay, and this is the overall point, and this is what I say to kids, and this is the truth. And this is, and when it comes to ending any dispute, this is ultimately what you need to train kids to do, is to be that one. Someone has to choose to be unselfish. This is ultimately the thing. So with sibling type disputes, or these types of disputes over things, instead of trying to solve the issue, which you normally can't do, you have to make this type of appeal. You have to make this type of appeal in a way that they can process, and in a way that's convincing that this is going to actually be the solution, and in a way that switches their minds to where they can take in the lesson and connect it to higher values that they do have, but they don't know how to apply them to their everyday actions.
Well, this goes for you too, my friend.
Now, what he did there, he said facts, he acknowledged it, and then he kind of gave the girl a look like, see, you're going to be unselfish, you know? So I'm just saying to him, it applies to you too there.
So the two of you are having a dispute over something right now. The one who can choose to be unselfish is the one who is going to do good for the world generally. You know,
Now he's being clever there, and he does really want the spot. Like, it does mean a lot to him. He's being clever there, saying, well, she's a good person, so she should do it. Now he doesn't want to give the thing up, and not everyone's going to give the thing up. However, there's still something that's changed here, because before I said this, the angle he was taking was, I've taken your phone and I'm not going to give it back to you until you give me what I want. And it's all this threat thing. But now what I have him doing is projecting something positive onto her. Now, it took about 15 seconds after this. And with teenagers, after you kind of drop these lessons, you have to remove yourself from the situation a little bit, because teenagers are very open to being influenced by adults, and they want to be influenced by adults, but they also want to feel like it's the decisions were arrived by on their own. So like, you kind of have to turn away for a little bit to let them resolve it, so that it's like, they don't think that you see them. But it took about 15 seconds of that, and they agreed. She said, okay, because before it was, well, she said, well, I'll get out, but you give me my phone back. And he said, no, you get out, then I'll give you the phone back, that type of thing. But about 15 seconds after this, he agreed. Okay. Okay. She said, okay, if you think I'm a good person, then if you give me the phone, trust me, I'll give you the seat back. And they did. And the conflict was resolved. Okay, alhamdulillah. When giving this, I've told you I taught fourth grade for 5 years. I was teaching fourth graders where I first developed this. And with fourth graders, it wasn't uncommon at all. And they actually they enter into more of these petty fights than high schoolers do. It wasn't uncommon at all with fourth graders when I do this, that they'd flip from arguing over, give me that, give me that, give me that, to no, you have it, no, you have it, to arguing the other way, like wanting to be the one who's unselfish instead. And that's that dynamic. Like 9-10-year-olds are at the age where 9-10-year-olds still have enough of wanting to be people pleasers to adults in them that, after you say that to them, they'll want to impress you sort of with their being unselfish and following what you're saying. After they take the lesson in, teenagers are more, they want it to be their own decision. But the same type of teaching works. And, even with not too much, even with only just a little bit simpler language, the lesson works for 5 and 6-year-olds as well. So this is an important thing, and relating it to altruistic lessons, and not trying to solve the dispute itself, but explain to kids the virtues that end up leading to conflict resolution. Now, how do we relate this to Islam? Bismillah. The beautiful thing here too is, after this happens, I can go to the young man, or if it's my son or whoever later on, after they've made the good decision, after they've made the unselfish decision, I can say to them, what you did there was good. I appreciate that. It's nice to not have a fight or whatever. And I can share with them the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that, I don't remember it exactly, but, for me, as I've said, I'm not a student of knowledge. And a lot of us are this way, like to get the Islamic learning right, we have to go look it up ourselves and then come back to like a different time later. And we can do that. And sometimes with the kids, you might have this conflict resolution play out, and then you revisit it later at dinner or something, and you praise them for doing the right thing, and you tell them, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that a house in or a spot in Jannah or a house in Jannah is guaranteed for anyone who leaves off arguing, even when they are correct. Even when they are correct, and you can praise the child for having done that, introducing the hadith, and it's being introduced to them now in a way where it's not, you can use hadith and things. I mean, the speech of Allah and the speech of the Prophet, peace upon him, is the best speech, so you can use it at any time. But we want to take advantage too of these opportunities where after the kid has done something right, we share the Islamic text that praises that virtue. And now the kid has the opportunity to experience, well, this is something that I have done. This is something that I already do. And alhamdulillah, I also know now that this is a good thing Islamically for me to do. And that's very powerful. Something that is known with feedback, both of students and also something I know very well with feedback, like coaching feedback given to teachers. The type of feedback that you usually get the most results out of people with is feedback that praises them for something they're already doing well, or something that they've done well, already experienced doing well, and maybe even shows them a deeper reason why that's a good thing. People are more likely to do more of something they already do that's good, as opposed to getting rid of things they do that are negative. Bad habits are, they take longer to get out of, more so with adults than with children. Children actually can change bad habits quicker because they change quicker. But that's a type of experience of the Islamic learning that needs to be incorporated in the kids' learning, where they've done something well and they're, or they executed a lesson well and they're praised for it with it alongside the Islamic text. And a lot of times kids, like the hadith relates to Jannah. Kids, a lot of times many times their actions, what's going to get them to do the right actions, they may be more responsive to the things that relate to dunya results first. Why? Because, for all intents and purposes, they don't feel close to death. And it is okay to remind our kids that death will come and to have them reflect on it. I'll talk about that in a sec. But young kids, it's in teenagers, but kids also, it's easier for them to rationalize away, like, well, Jannah, where my afterlife, that's far away. I have time for Allah to forgive me, So sometimes they can dismiss it in their heads because of that. And, there's nothing about Islam that we can't relate to real life wisdom as well. So we want to include that wisdom in these real life situations, and then, include the Islamic texts. It can be on either end, but one way to do it is on the back end after they've done the right thing, praising them for it and showing them that they've already exhibited an Islamic virtue. I do hang in my classroom, the two signs I have up in my classroom. I have the hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him, of kindness is not put into anything except that it beautifies it, and is not removed from anything except that it disgraces it. And I also have the hadith about the strongest person is not the one who's best at fighting, but the one who controls himself when he's angry. And sometimes when I need to, I will just point to those things to kids to get them to remember. So hadith can be used in that way. But again, when it gets to these different levels of talking to kids about things, I want us to get this idea that after they do something well, and after we've gotten them to do something well, we want to praise them for that after that to make them feel good. And it's a really good time to connect it to the Islamic lesson also. Really good time, because then they're going to feel empowered that Islam is something they can act out and that they can do these virtues and they'll have experienced it. Okay, we'll go to the next video. I'll go to the questions. Sarah asks, Assalamu alaikum, brother. I'm really waiting for the course. I will also include will you also include toddlers and preschoolers in the course, or just older kids? Sometimes they get very challenging. Yeah, the way I'm going to structure the course, Sarah, it's going to follow what I've done here similarly. If you did not see the Parenting Summit session that I did in October with One Way to Tarbiyah, in that one, I kind of went over some key developmental factors. I'm going to talk more about developmental factors here in a sec with kids, unlike a birth to age 18 type of continuum. The way I'm going to structure the course, I'm going to start off very similar to the sessions that we did in February and March about the nonverbals and the approach and de-escalating and all that type of stuff, because I just think that stuff is very, very important. I'm going to add another thing that I didn't have the chance to give you guys about how to get kids to do tasks around the house independently, because a lot of times that's what we're trying to redirect our kids to do, and those are skills parents need, and we do need more and families to help with that. We do need more boys to do more stuff around the house, in my opinion, because they're not going out in the fields and stuff these days doing work when they're young ages. They need to learn responsibility like that. So it's going to start off with that with Sarah. Then after, because I just think those are really immediate, important things for families to get. And then after that, I'm going to go into like the developmental thing, like the developmental stages type of stuff, talking. And I'll begin with little ones and toddlers with that. Okay. Well, I'm an introverted person, hard in expressing word. How do I learn the art of talking to the kids? Inshallah, Noel, reading can help you. Inshallah, reflecting in the nighttime can help you. And look, you don't have to be perfect with it at the same time. Part of the reason I'm trying to show the video is to give some exact models. You can try doing the exact same thing. I get that maybe it doesn't feel natural for you, and there's an extent to which you have to feel natural. Just understand, like, you want to be honest with your kids. You want to be honest. So, if you're trying to express something to your kids and you struggle with it, it's okay to let them know that. It's okay to there's something I want to explain to you, like, give me some time to think of it. Or I know I want you to understand this lesson. I maybe can't articulate it to you now, or I can't say it to you the best way now, but I've learned in life that this is true, and I'm going to come back to it another time. That type of stuff, like just honesty with the kids is very important with that type of thing. In my opinion, another thing too, write it down. The fact that I wrote a book helped me so much, and I started doing presentations and this type of thing, and structured presentations, because I'd write stuff out beforehand. The big thing about how teaching really helped me. Like writing is something people don't do enough of these days, because we're so used to these quick, texting. I don't mean texting. I mean writing. Keyboard or with your hand or otherwise. Writing your thoughts out. That helps prepare you to. That helps firm up the way you want to articulate things in your mind ahead of time. So that's a good way to take time to do that. Inshallah, you can enter in some reflective conversations with your spouse as well. When the kids aren't around, this type of thing. Reflective conversations together. Try to be soft with that. Not understand. You might have sometimes we have conversations where we're expressing stress about the situations with the kids, and sometimes the husbands take those as burdensome. I'm not saying not to do that, but just be conscious of that. But inshallah, you and your parents, you and your spouse, inshallah, can enter in those types of conversations, because those are helpful too, and you can collaborate a little on how to talk, and revisit it, and just don't be afraid to mess up. Because me, like this type of talking, I developed this over years. I was not good at. I was terrible at talking to kids my first 2 years of teaching, back when I knew Wedgedy. Stressed out in those days. Okay, let's look at the next video. Do some more video breakdown. Inshallah, you're enjoying this. Okay. Let's get to the next one. Okay, in this situation, so now when we're talking to kids too, and especially we're going to teach them a lesson, you maybe have to do this more as a teacher, certainly in teaching the whole class, but you want to make sure they are set to listen the way you want them to listen. It's part of the reason why at dinner it is very important to have defined manners that are expectations for kids, for how they sit at dinner, whether or not they, what the process is for getting out of their seat if they want, how they ask for something to be passed, how their feet are, how their hands are, what frame within their, their arm, respecting their own personal space or whatever. You want your kids to be very controlled. You want things to be very controlled like that at dinner. Part of that is so that they're able to listen. Basic things I tell my kids, they have to be sitting so their toes are pointing forward, because that way they're sitting square. Have to keep their hands to themselves, have to ask to get up, that type of thing. And generally, after I train that into them, we refer to that as sitting properly. And now, if my kids are slouching or whatever, I'm going to say sit properly, and they know how to get into the form or whatever. And cultures have some different expectations on it, but you want to set kids to be in a mode to listen before you start talking to them and be in a mode to learn. Now, in teaching, you do that by, you have a set expectation for how the kids look and what they're doing before you start teaching. So they have the book out, phones are put away, headphones put away, pencils out, all that type of stuff. Now, kids will use this type of thing to enter into power struggles. And anytime a kid resists what you want, you call that a power struggle. And kids with power struggles, they generally will peak with them around ages like 14, 15, but still have some left over after that. Things might get deeper if they have animosity towards you in those later ages. They'll start with them, they can start with them very young, But anyway, power struggles are really triggering to adults and really triggering to parents. And they create the moments where, we want to start laying into kids and telling them they're being disrespectful and being coercive. But, what is more efficient in the long run is, again, slowing down, taking the space to teach a deeper lesson. And these situations, power struggles arise because of the kid's immaturity. And these situations are important situations for teaching them about their own psychological developments. And in these videos I have here are some examples of that. It's bigger.
this is
okay. Sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't set the context enough. This was at the beginning of a class, and a student didn't want to put their headphones away, and they had their phone out on their desk or whatever, and take the book out. Now, something I get from all the time with the kids, they have their headphones in. I'll say, take the headphones out. They say, Mister, I'm not listening to anything. So, instead of getting into, it doesn't matter, I said to put them away, or, it's disrespectful to not have them in, instead of just going right into that, give a more extended explanation. What you're going to see here.
This is your guys' limited environmental awareness when you're young. And by environments, I don't mean the ecology, I mean of your surroundings. Which I'm not blaming you, but you'll have a stronger awareness of this as you get older. And it's my job to try to encourage more of your awareness on this.
Okay, now this is one of the basic things of developmental psychology with kids. Okay, as you grow up, when you're young, you're extremely self-centered. And as you grow up, you gradually become less self-centered. And we want our kids to, kids can be in different places with the extent to which how self-centered we are. And we want our kids to be less self-centered and more aware of their surroundings and more able to appreciate the perspective of others. Now, in order to get kids to do that, they need this type of explicit instruction that I'm going to give them, where they need the environmental circumstances at play and the perspective of another person, of the other person in the situation, explained in small detail, and again, explained in a calm way so that they're able to receive it. And another thing too, like relating it directly to this, about how this is a developmental thing with you guys and your limited environmental awareness. Learning about developmental psychology with kids and their developmental factors. The biggest reason to learn about that is so you can teach that to your kids. It's not like some type of secret knowledge that you use so then you manipulate kids with it. The most powerful thing about learning about it is so that you can teach it to kids, so that they can become self-aware of it. And that is going to be the biggest thing for that, to get them to prompt themselves to mature past it and mature quicker with it. And it will also greatly increase their awareness of the motivations and actions of their peers. So again, like, I'll go over it more in my course, as I said, but I did talk about some basic developmental things in the session back in October, which one way to Tarbiyah can share out again. But a really basic one is, going from being self-centered to more environmentally aware and more aware of the perspective of others. And as adults, we have to, it benefits us to teach the kids those things, but with us, understand those things has to give us patience, because we lose sense of the limited awareness of that kids have. Because for a kid, it's like, and this student too, by the way, this is an honest student. This is a student who's very responsible, a student who gets good grades, student who takes care of younger siblings at home, student who was a refugee who experienced starvation when she was a young child. So she doesn't have, the issue with her keeping the headphones is I don't know if she's actually listening to something or not. But it would be wrong of me to accuse her of lying, and I don't want to get into that game with her, because one, she doesn't deserve it. And two, once I accuse the kid of that, they can tell, they can enter into a wall, and no, I'm not, and this type of back and forth. But the fact that she puts me in a position where I have to make that consideration is what the issue is. So I'm going to explain that. You think I have the phone out, I have my headphones in, but I'm not listening to anything, so it's okay. But it's a matter of when you do that, I have to be concerned about whether or not you're paying attention and engaged in class. It's part of my job to get you engaged in class. Part of my job to teach you as best I can. I can't teach you as best I can if I don't set you ready to learn before I start teaching. You get what I'm saying? So I have to do that. So when you have the headphones in, or you have the phone out, you're looking at it or whatever, you're categorically creating more work for me. Do you understand? And you're dragging the learning down of the class for everyone else. So therefore, it's not respectful to even have it out or have those things out, despite of what you think you're doing or what you are doing or not. I can never know whether or not there's something going on in your ears. You know what I'm saying? So I can't go on that, because there's no way I can know. I can only go based on what I see. You get what I'm saying? So a couple of things there. Notice, again, a lot of times as adults, it seems obvious to us why it's disrespectful. Like you're not showing me I'm paying attention. You don't even could ask, well, who am I to deserve to be shown that I need to be paying attention? So just going over the overall context in detail, that I have a responsibility I have to fulfill. It makes me have to wonder something. Because I have to wonder something, I have to get distracted. That drags all the learning down. Like a young person, even age 17, they're genuinely not considering those types of things. And it's not that they don't have the ability to it, but just, in their own going about things, in their own self-centeredness, they're not considering it. So just slowing the situation down and naming explicitly that in a calm way gives them a chance to think about it, gives them a chance to appreciate it, that I'm not just doing this out of my own vanity. There is bigger reasons why. Relating it to their maturity shows that there's something good in it for them. And relating it to it being a developmental factor with them, that again, that's a depersonalizing effect. It's a depersonalizing effect, which is really good for breaking down defense walls, because then they don't have to take it as something personal. It's not just about you and your choice and what you want to do. This is about something bigger and something overall going on, even though it's a small thing. And it's an overall way of our kids to get the lesson that our small actions have big overall impacts, which is certainly something that we know from Islam. And explaining that and then saying, therefore, that's why it's disrespectful. That type of explanation is very, very important for our kids. It's very important. Instead of just going straight to it's disrespectful. Sometimes we need to reflect ourselves and really think through the reasons why things are disrespectful. And also, too, going back to how our kids are growing up in competitive environments for their attention and for their values and stuff. And we can't rely on the overall village reinforcement of values to them. They generally, they will genuinely have different interpretations of what is and is not respectful, because they're being exposed to so many different things and so many different interpretations of that. In a society where everyone reinforces the same thing of what's respectful and what's not, okay, they're just going to take basic things in, and then you can say it's disrespectful without it having to be questioned. But the kids nowadays, they will need this type of explanation. And after that explanation is given, then it becomes an opportunity. I was like, okay, well, I didn't know that, or now I have a greater appreciation for that. So now I can appreciate why it's disrespectful. And it's not just me using the name of something being disrespectful as a coercive tool towards you. And again, when I went into this, well, actually, no, she took out the headphones right after that. Another thing too about this talk, I'm not being like overly nice. I'm not being overly nice, and I'm not a fan of being, some people like sometimes they're too gentle, too overly nice, and not having the headphones in was disrespectful. Giving a talk like this, it's the most common consequence that I give to kids, and it's not something that most people even like think of as a consequence. It's just that you have to listen to me talk for a few minutes, a lot of time, and take in the explanation. A lot of times that itself is enough of a consequence for kids, especially when they do smaller actions that of things that are wrong. A lot of times that's enough of a consequence. The other thing I'll say. So me, it's just these types of talks are a big thing that I think of as a consequence. Do one more video. Inshallah. Go to Susan here. Suzanne Shatila. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair, brother, for your advice. Can you please share tips on how to let kids open up to us and share more about their day and tell us details? So, I have a playlist on my channel called Advice for Teens and Adults. I believe I have a video on there called Asking Kids About Their Day. You can watch that. What I basically go over there, and I will go over this in the course. Look, understand with kids, inshallah, you're starting this with kids who are younger, but this holds true with any types of kids. When you're asking them about their day and they're out for the day, with kids, and you talk to them, there is a continuum between concrete things you can ask about and abstract questions you can ask. Concrete meaning having something that's concrete is something you can experience with your five senses. Something that's abstract means it exists within the realm of human ideas. So you want to, any type of learning and any type of training a kid to do something new, such as talking about their own day. You always have to go slow in order to go fast. You always have to start with incremental steps to build up, and it will kind of go on a continuum like this, with the progress. So you want to start with questions with the kids that are easy to answer and that are concrete, even if you have a lot of them. So if a kid goes to school, you want to ask them, like when you get off the bus, what's the first room you walk to? Do you walk right to your classroom, or do you go to your locker, or do you walk right to your classroom, or do you go into a waiting room? Okay, just something like that. Like when you can ask, like, what color shirt was your teacher wearing today? Just little things like this, just to get them going, and like just getting their mind used to when you ask a question, they have a response to it. Now with little kids especially, but even some kind of older ones, you'll find that when you ask those questions, it'll still take them a moment to answer. They'll be like, and it's a general rule. You want to give kids, if you're speaking to them in their first language, at least 3 seconds of wait time to answer a question after you ask it. Even with a concrete question, as the question's more abstract, it's even bigger. But you want to start with those questions just to get them built up to the habit of responding to you. Another way you get kids to respond to your questions is you give them 2 choices in the questions. Now that can be yes or no, or or yes or no questions, or it can be something else. At school, do you start the day, what's the first lesson that you do? Is it reading? Is it math? Or is it something else? Okay, 2, 3 choices or whatever. Now they have something to choose on. So, the first thing you're trying to do is to just get them the habit of responding in. That's how you begin with it. Now, in the beginning of doing this, and of course, this stuff happens around the dinner table. It's the best place to do it because it happens daily. In the beginning of doing this, you don't have to get a conversation out of them in the beginning of doing this. You just have to get some reciprocation so they get that habit going. And then what you want to do in turn is you want to talk about yourself and your own reflections of your own life that relate as close as they can to whatever context you're asking the kid about. So if you're asking them about their first grade classroom, you ask them some simple question, like what did you have for lunch? What was the first lesson, reading or math or whatever, simple question to ask. And then you want to go into some reflection, and then, sometimes they'll answer that and say more comment that might allow you to ask something more. If they don't, then you want to go into talking about something that you remember from first grade or whatever, and something I've shared with my kids. I can remember walking into my first grade classroom and entering the door and feeling like a sinking feeling going through my stomach, because I was nervous because of how much longer the day was going to be because of kindergarten. I remember that my first day of school, that type of thing. Now, when you start doing that, you're doing 2 things. One, you're modeling for them how to talk about their day more, and maybe modeling for them how to talk about your inner thoughts of the day more, which is a little more abstract. The other thing you're doing is you're showing them that you are relatable to what they're going through, because kids don't empathize with the experience of adults well. And it's not just automatic to them that you used to be a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old or whatever. You have to make that connection explicit to them. So, talking to them a lot about your own experience in school, that models it for them, and continue doing that. And you will see them come out more. That will start to make them more comfortable with coming out with those things. I see that take place with my classes every year. The first half of the year, I do a lot of just talking to them, and I don't expect them to output too much to me. But the second half, they start to give me more, so long as it's done like this. Inshallah, that is helpful, sister. Okay, one more video, inshallah, and then I might say a quick thing on something else. How do I get this? Okay. That one. Share slide. No. Sorry. Thank you for your patience, everyone. There we go. This is actually shortly after I was given the last talk, and this related to um, now about getting the book out. Okay. And again, it's good to take time with these things. It's good to take time with these things because it creates less time in the long run because the kids appreciate the reasons for doing things. So, I got her to take the headphones out. Then the next thing is getting the book out because, having the book out shows that you're learning. Now, me, when I read to the students, I have a document camera. I also put the book on the screen. So she was like, she was like, I'm just gonna look on the screen or whatever, some of it's just like, I just want my own. Some of this is just like, I just want my own independence of choice type of thing, But anyway, so now I'm on take the book out and the power struggle there, or avoiding the power struggle and relating to the lesson. If you hear a dog barking, it's my parents' dog because I'm at my parents' house because I worked on it in my basement and my parents are non-Muslim, so don't think I have a dog living in my home.
But regardless, I mean, it's part of my job as an older person in your life, as someone who's assigned as your teacher, to be pushing you.
Again, getting them to appreciate my perspective. Don't expect young people to appreciate your perspective easily. You want to explain what your perspective and what your objective and what your own responsibility is to them, matter-of-factly, calmly, and very practically. That's just a big learning lesson for them. And again, it models for them also the same type of reflection and self-awareness.
Because the quicker you mature in life, the better off you will be. And all the things I say, it's never to shame you guys individually, because everything that is a deficiency with you is something that's completely normal for your age.
Now, these things, I personally, working with kids, I've found it's completely okay to say to kids things like, I'm not mad at you, like, I'm not angry, you're not going to get in trouble. All that, I'm not trying to shame you. All that type of stuff. It's completely okay to say that. It's good to say that stuff to kids. So long as, one, you mean it, and number two, you're being calm when you do it. Because if you're not calm, then they're not going to believe it. And if you don't mean it, or you say it one time and then you follow through with something that shows the opposite, then they're not going to trust you next time. But so long as those conditions are met, it's completely okay to say these things like, I'm not trying to shame you, I'm not trying to make you feel bad, and that type of stuff. Because again, you want to get the defense walls down in order to get them open. So that's my experience with saying that. And again, I mean, what I was just telling the student here, and this is where I'm talking to one student, but I'm also talking to the class generally to make it more general, and relating it to the development of young people in general. And you can talk to your kids that way. When you make it to the development of young people in general, it depersonalizes it from them, and that gets the defense walls down, and gives them insight into greater lessons. And what I'm explaining to there was what I was just explaining to you guys. We want you to try to mature faster, and learning these things and learning about yourself. This is how you mature faster. You want to be explicit with what you do for kids. It's not like some type of secret.
We all have our deficiencies. Some of these things you work on for your whole life. But, part of growing up, part of how you literally change in your mind and the way you think and what your brain can do as you get older is your awareness of others and your awareness of your environment and your ability to understand how things look through another person's eyes. That increases gradually as you get older. Children hardly have that ability at all. Teenagers are in the middle with it. It's developing. It's way better than it was when you guys were in middle school. I taught you in middle school. Middle schoolers are, extremely self-centered and very focused on the development of their ego, and they usually fuel their ego by showing off that they cannot listen to adults. By this age, you've gained a realization for the silliness of a lot of that. But still at this age, people 16, 17, 18, they tend to be going through something where they definitely know they're not kids anymore.
Cell phone.
They definitely know they're not kids anymore. they also know they've been restricted their whole lives up to this point, and they don't have the independence of decision making that adults have. They are usually really strongly in want of that. So sometimes that manifests as making decisions to not do something an adult says just because they want the decision to be their own. I've known students who fail classes. They fail classes just because they want to make the choice to fail the class. It's not something unnormal for teenagers, and it's understandable. And the me asking you to have the book and have the book out, it's a manifestation of that. It's a manifestation of that. And the lack of appreciation for how it's simpler to just have the book works better for the overall learning environment to just have the book and all that type of thing. That's something that the limited environmental awareness that you have doesn't give you a full appreciation for that. But you will understand it when you're older. You will understand it when you're older. But I do understand your ability or your desire to want to do things your own way. But
Now there, so I mean, I'm explaining kind of what I was just explaining to you guys. And again, so this, an important part of that is at the end saying you will understand it. Like you want to project positive things onto them. So you should have said inshallah after it. But again, like when it comes into these power struggles, you want to slow the situation down. You want to do these things that decrease the defense walls. It's good to relate things to developmental factors. And one of the basic developmental factors is, going from being extremely self-centered to, to being able to consider the perspective of others. Going from limited environmental awareness to being able to understand, what's going on around you. With kids, when you teach, something really interesting. High schoolers, they can be sitting 12 feet away from you, having a conversation with each other, and they don't think you can hear the conversation as an adult. Like they'll be having the conversation, and you can say something to them that interjects and shows that you were listening to what they were saying, and they'll be like, "You heard that, mister?" This type of thing. Like in a concrete way, you can actually experience how limited their environmental awareness is. Like 12 to 15 feet. You can sit 12 to 15 feet away from a teenager. They can be having a conversation, and they literally will not think you can hear that conversation. If you're within 5 feet, they'll think it, but not within 12 to 15 feet. With younger kids, it's less feet. It's like you can be 6 feet away, and they won't think you're hearing the conversation, this type of thing. Like you can hear it in a literal way. So, this is a core developmental thing and a core thing of maturity that we want to push our kids on. And it's a key thing to go to and to talk to them about self-centeredness when these power struggles happen, delivering the lessons in a calm way. And when they do the right action, praising them and relating that to Islamic learning, it is all going to build very well to create a positive Islamic identity, inshallah. So we've been going for about an hour in here. Just one thing I want to mention, because I had talked about a few things. I'm gonna do videos. I appreciate everything everyone submitted in the contact forms, the intake forms in the beginning. I will plan, those of you who really expressed some things, I'm going to do like video responses to those in my channel because you put the time in for that. I want to put in the time to give individualized responses for those. I did already post one. If you look at my channel, the most recent video is to a sister who had a 6-year-old that she was having issues with, and I responded. So look out for those, please, on my channel. Also, too, I wanted to talk a little bit because I know some people, they're having issues, like kids are copying this or that, and you want to turn them around. I wanted to get into that more, like this issue of how we talk to them. The learning, it's a little more extended than maybe I anticipated. Something I learned in piloting the course. But I will either get into that in my course or do videos on that. Just one thing I wanted to add is those of you who are having problems with kids, if you've learned something as you learn about kids, you realize mistakes you made or things you didn't do well, and now your kids are older, they have some animosity towards you. It's important to apologize to them. Even if you feel like they have something that they should apologize to you for, it's important to apologize to them. If you didn't, this whole thing about being calm, if you weren't having calm interactions with kids when you were teaching them for a lot of things, you should intake the understanding that probably hurt them emotionally more than you realized. Usually that's the case. I mean, people will cope with that. They will cope with that. They will reconcile that. Not everyone takes it that way. A lot of times when kids have backlashes against their parents when they become older, it's rooted in that. If you've learned something new, just, write to them or say openly, honestly, I've learned that and I'm sorry for it. There is a video, I'll put it in the chat. When it comes to calling back our family members, to Islam, maybe they've left Islam or they are, maybe they've left Islam or they, or they're just more liberalized version or not practicing the way we'd like or this type of thing. In essence, we're calling them back to Islam, or we're calling them to Islam. I mean, that's something I've thought a lot about in my life because my whole family is non-Muslim. My wife's whole family is not Muslim. Even my own wife, she only became Muslim 4 years ago, alhamdulillah. But I was with her before I was Muslim, so I spent 10 years with her as my wife not being Muslim, trying to call her to Islam. When you have something that's gone wrong with kids and you feel like you're wrong, just understand it takes patience. You're playing a very long game with them. It begins with setting things right in a way where they're going to be able to receive what you can say. And that begins with apologizing. The video I just put in the chat it's a fairly well-known lecture of Sheikh Muhammad Salah ibn Uthaymeen, may Allah have mercy on him, about calling to Islam in a non-Muslim society. And some of the principles he talks about that are things we need to apply with our family members who've gone astray. He talks about, one, the person calling having knowledge. Two, the person acting upon the knowledge that they know. So, those two things, sometimes we were trying to raise our kids upon Islam, but those things weren't actually in place. Maybe we didn't have enough knowledge themselves. Maybe we were too stressed out to really exhibit the manners of the Sunnah and the generous character of the Prophet, and to know how to do that effectively with kids. So, we can apologize for that. And there's a hadith of Prophet ﷺ. He says better than fasting, not Ramadan fasting, but supererogatory fasting and charity is, he asked, shall I tell you what's better than those things? And the companion said yes. And he said, making amends between people, making amends. So there's nothing wrong with apologizing. That's where you have to begin with family members, and from there you have to be tactical about gradually trying to get them to reflect and rope back. And those are things I'll continue to talk about on my channel, inshallah. Wayakum Sumaya, Jazakallah for the class. I took a few great tips. I appreciate that very much. Jazakumullah khairan to One Way to Tarbiyah and to everyone else. Again, I really appreciate the chance to do these sessions and to pilot the frame of the course. Watch out on Abraham Education, my YouTube channel. I'll be starting June 11th. You'll recognize some of the early material, but I'll also, alhamdulillah, having done this, gives me the chance to refine it and improve it, which I appreciate very much. I will probably Wedgie, if your family, if I could get anything, if any of the sisters who participated, if you could write up a little testimonial, something about how you benefited from this or that, something that I can share on my social media to get the hype going for what I'm going to do this summer. That'd be very, very appreciated. Aside from that, feel free to also send me any other questions or feedback that you have as we continue working on the issues with our youth, inshallah. So, Jazakallah khair. Okay, and Wedge, I'll catch up with you. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship except for Him alone. I ask Allah for forgiveness. Any good that was said comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And any wrong that was said is due to the evils and the deficiencies within my own soul and my own self, and I ask Allah for forgiveness. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.